tight on time, you know. Ooh, heavier than it looks. Good evening. Super exciting to be here. Honestly, just pretty exciting to be out on a Tuesday. I don't get out that much. In fact, I get out so little that when I was out 2 weeks ago and went to 2 bars in one evening, which was pretty crazy. My bank cancelled my credit card because, as the bank rep told me, it was just so far outside your normal spending history. We assumed that it had to be fraud. And I was unfortunate, right, because the night had been going pretty well so far. I'd made it to 2 bars. I was still awake, and I didn't get asked for ID once, which is a new record for me. I'm 26 next month. It's not actually a joke, but thank you for laughing at my, I don't know, biological makeup, I suppose. No, it's true. I know I do look pretty young. In fact, I try and dress a bit older. I used to wear a blazer like almost every day until May of last year, when I was walking down Dame Street and an old woman stopped me and asked if I was enjoying my first Holy Communion. She did give me €20 though, so it was a bit of a rough time. Like, I know I look young, right? But like, I have this weird kind of like optical illusion situation happening with bouncers, because on one side I look 17, but on the other side I have the disposition of a retired librarian. And they're not sure whether to ask for a bus pass or an H card. It's a bit of a weird situation. But like, in the sort of facet of me being a librarian, I'm here to tell you a story. And it's a story that some of you might know. It's the story of the hare and the tortoise. It's one of Aesop's fables. And spoiler alert, but it is 1,500 years old. So I figure if you haven't seen it by now, this is the time to do it. Here we go. Yeah, cute, right? I had a very productive day in work today looking for this image. But the story, if you don't know it, I'll give you the kind of TLDR. It concerns slow tortoise and a fast kind of like pricky hare who gives him a bit of abuse every day, being like, I could take you in a race. And one day the tortoise is like, all right, come at me, bro, let's do it. And they take off, and unsurprisingly, the hare like takes off. But he gets so far ahead, and he's such a dick, that he takes a nap in the middle of the race. As a real kind of like, fuck you, like, we probably shouldn't be competing in the same event, but, you know, we'll go with it. Takes a nap, and the tortoise kind of slow and steadily passes him out, gives him the finger, I assume, and just continues on his way and ends up winning the race. Now, the reason I'm telling you the story isn't just for this Google image, although it is pretty solid. It's to explain how our brains work, right? Because as a guy called Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize-winning economist, talks about, we can think of our brain as having 2 systems, fast and slow, or as I like to think about it, hare and tortoise, right? So that's going to be like what we're going to talk about for most of the thing. And if this gets a little bit confusing or a little bit boring, just picture this again, and we'll be good to go from there. So the first thing I want to talk about is our slow brain, the little cute tortoise here. So the slow brain is where we do our kind of our complex processing, right? It's where we do our kind of like hard work. It's where we process like our logical, complex behavior. And here we do a lot of work, but it actually takes quite a lot out of our brain. It relies on a thing called working memory. And our working memory is pretty limited. It only can handle about 3 or 4 things at one time. Think of the size of like a sticky note, and that's kind of what we have to work with, which is a little sad. But we are supplemented by our hare. This is where we do most of our thinking. It's called automatic processing, and most of the things we've learned once, we'll kind of just repeat them. So for example, I have no idea how this microphone works, but I'm not really concentrating on that. I'm more concentrating on working through the talk, and none of you were ever really thinking about how the microphone worked until I pointed it out just now, which would put it into the tortoise brain, but normally it's right in the hare here. So in the hare, we do a lot of automatic processing, and you don't really think about this, but sometimes you'll see it happening in the background. So for example, have you ever been in the shower? And well, hopefully you have, but if you've ever been in the shower and suddenly out of seemingly nowhere, this thought pops into your head and you get this like eureka moment. That's your hare processing in the background, this automatic processing, and suddenly comes to the forefront. But the thing is, right, we'd go crazy without our hare brain if we were processing everything in our tortoise brain. And what happens here is through a process of selective attention, we kind of like filter out things. So when I say filtering in behavioral psychology, it's the word heuristics, but if you think of it like a spam filter, right? So we have like filters in our brain that kind of keep certain blue pills or like Nigerian princes like out of our brain. And that works most of the time, right? But there are sometimes, say, you've ordered like a prescription from the pharmacy for a different type of pill, and that can sometimes get caught up in our spam filter as well. That happens with our brain. It works most of the time, but sometimes it gets in the way. There's a famous experiment, some of you might know. It involves a group of people playing basketball. And when watching this video, the participants are asked to count the number of passes made by people in white shirts, like mine, and ignore the ones in the black shirts. Now, in the middle of the experiment, a guy dressed as a gorilla actually walks through the middle of the thing beating his chest. Now, about 50-60% of people like watching the experiment don't notice the gorilla at all. This is a very HD image I found on Google. The study was from the early 90s, but I guess that style is kind of in again. But the main point is that like the gorilla kind of walks through, and because our brain is concentrating on something else, we miss out on it. Now, the situation here is that like I don't have a gorilla walking through, but hopefully you've noticed that I'm wearing glasses. And that at some extent is influencing your impression of me, right? So about 50% of people believe glasses make a person look more intelligent. 1 in 3 believe a person make glasses look more professional. And about 40% of the room, so say like this half here, would consider wearing like glasses to like clear glasses as fake ones to get ahead and pretend to be smart, which is exactly what I've been doing for the past. I'm actually super blind, no. I definitely need them a lot. I was going to get like an eye chart and learn it off, but it was just not going to work. But the thing is, right, like our brain does work on these shortcuts a lot. I was having dinner with my dad the other day, and as we were leaving the restaurant, he was like, "Hey, let's get a taxi." Now his brain, because he's almost 60, was to step out onto the street, raise his arm, and like hail a taxi. I was immediately like going to my phone, right, which is like how our brains are operating. It was a kind of a nice treat to get a taxi home, because like usually I will get a taxi to where the meter hits like €10, and that's just where I live. Like I'll get a taxi I'm at after this, I'll be on the M50, it'll hit 10 quid. I'm like, yeah, that's where I live, it's fine. Just like climbing over the barrier. But we can see this kind of like tortoise and hare situation happening with taxi drivers as well, right? So it was happening, you know, like a person who's been driving a taxi for so long that they can do it like automatic processing and spend their tortoise brain coming up with arguably hare-brained like immigration policies as they're like driving down the situation. This actually happened to me when I was in San Francisco. I was in an Uber from the airport and we're speeding down the 101 at about 90 miles an hour. And at this point, I was getting a little concerned because even though I have faith in this guy's harebrain, he was playing a game on his phone, which was obviously slightly concerning from a personal safety perspective, but more just the guy's lack of imagination. He was playing Mario Kart. I was like, you're already driving a car. Like, play FIFA or something. Like, it's not like at the end of the day we all go home and play Spreadsheet Simulator. It's just not. And leaving you on this, there's this final psychological behavior called the peak end effect, where you actually aren't going to remember all of this talk at all. You're going to remember the peak, which for me was when the gorilla kind of walked through, and the end bit, which is kind of the pressure to kind of finish things on a high. I didn't really finish writing the speech, but I wish I had kind of nailed it a little bit more at the end. But 3 things to take away, right? One is that not all of our brains work in the same way due to selective attention. Second is that hares are pricks and don't trust them. And third, your friend with glasses probably isn't as smart as you think. Thanks so much.